car start popping and cut off, okay? The motor and the computer is not communicating. That's what we're doing now. We under there trying to get everything done before we have no more daylight because we have to run. When you come to the track, you want to do one thing. That's the race.
Hello. Okay, so EFK swap. We are just about complete with phase one. It's been a heck of a ride with this thing. I'm coming up on probably about 2 years, and I wanted to make a video to kind of bookend it. I feel pretty comfortable saying that we're done with what I'm calling phase one, which means that the car drives, starts up. I've been out of town for a week, and the draw seems fine, held the charge, fired right up. Basically, it behaves like a normal car. So we're calling this quits for phase one. We've got a lot more in store, but as of right now, we're just going to drive it. I'm cleaning up all the fuel maps on it, and then eventually we'll get it to the dyno, and that'll be that. But this video is going to go over all of the tech I have into it, choices I made, things I did, and sort of just recap everything so I can put a nice bookend on it and move on from there. So I'm going to do it in segments, but just as a reminder, this is a K24 out of a Honda Accord, 5-speed transmission out of a Honda Accord. It's a PND Auto ECU out of an RSX automatic that's been modified to work with the manual trans using they have flying leads so you can get the speed input. But yeah, really basic setup. The theme of this entire build is budget, because we didn't have a lot of money to put into it. And it was really speed. I want everything to be able to come out and go back in quickly. And that's kind of those are the two driving forces behind this thing. I wanted to be able to strip it down fast, and I wanted it to be cheap. And I'd say we just about got it. So yeah, I'm gonna go over some of the tech and just kind of recap. Throttle body, this required a fair amount of work to get it up and running. It bolted up correctly, but it didn't have the hole for the IAC, so I had to drill the intake manifold to get the hole in there so that I could move the idle around. TPS didn't line up. There's actually a lot of people that struggle with this. They sell a metal one, basically this. I just made it out of plastic. And then the bracket for the throttle body, all out of ASA plastic. It came out well. I broke one of them due to it not being chunky enough. This should take the heat and take the abuse. Hasn't cracked yet. And then I know this looks like Mugen, but it's actually not. It's also 3D printed, and this has been holding pretty well. So intake manifold, throttle body, pretty good. Not too many changes, but oh, and then there's a bolt here, but there is an O-ring. So next step is to grab a smoke tester and smoke it and make sure that there are no leaks. So from the soft lines, I have everything running into a Willwood adjustable distribution valve. I really wanted to be able to set front to rear bias on the car. And this was, I think it was like $150. I did need to make a bracket so that I could put the distribution valve on. I didn't want to, I mean, I'm always trying to reuse factory bolt location. And it was a pretty easy bracket to make, and it holds pretty well. It's pretty sturdy. I mean, it doesn't want to move, like no deflection. So everything's nice. But yeah, the only real challenge with the brakes was getting it to adapt with the hard lines that were already in the vehicle, making sure that all the fittings lined up and everything. But it wasn't a super big challenge. So yeah, that's the brake side. The clutch side was a little trickier. So the EFs from the factory are cable throttle, which means they don't have a place to mount the clutch master cylinder. So you have to buy this bracket, which adapts to the factory pedal box, which I did, yes, spray silver. And the only issue is that I found is that on the upgraded clutches, which we have, I think, it's not Action, DC Sports competition clutch, I believe it is. It's upgraded, so the bracket has a lot of deflection. I solved some of it by putting in a brace bar, but even that's not doing the job. Next go around, once we pull the interior all the way out to redo painting or whatever, I'm gonna have to rethink that bracket. But for now it works. It moves a little, but it does clutch in and clutch. So the interior is nice and cozy. I'm pretty boring when it comes to my interiors. I like black. I like simple. I don't like any logos if possible, especially because they're cheaper, but mainly because I just don't like logos on a street car if I can avoid it. It's an energy steering wheel, but same deal. Took out the centerpiece. I'll probably have to reconsider something for the button. One thing that we are going to change immediately, we will shake the car down, but it's probably going to be the very first thing, is the tack. I tried to run the RSX tack, and I have it bolted under, as you can see, with some brackets that allow it to hold it in there. So the tack's pretty sturdy, but it pokes out. It doesn't fit right. I had worked on a bezel to make up the gap, and I just kind of got bored of it because, even if I do get it to sit correctly, I then have to address this, and I have to address the communication issues with the tack. I have RPM working. Speed is going to be a huge challenge if I want to get it to work, and then all the other lights and everything, and it just doesn't look great. So I'm going to go with a tablet and adapt it to this space. The shifter is from Bull Boost, which I believe is just a replica of the K-Sport or K-Pro probably. No, not K-Pro. Not really sure who they got it from, but it's nice. It's pretty cheap, works well. Fuse box from previous videos. I do have it back there. Wasn't the best call. It makes getting fuses almost impossible. I do like that it's nice and tucked back, but I guess I just didn't realize how much space I had to work with. So might address it, might just leave it, not sure yet. And then the rest of the wiring, just a quick breakdown of it. It's rough, but it's good. Like, there's a lot of extra loom in there that I don't like, but everything does have a home, and it does need some covers, but the location of everything is nice. I could just go in and shorten all the harness to make it better. But yeah, comes out pretty well, pretty much how I envisioned it. Maybe a little bit cleaner, obviously, but that's sort of where I wanted everything mounted. So carrying the theme underneath the car, you can see I've got the 1320 header, which I'm not a fan of. It's getting some light feedback here, but you can see kind of like right at the seams, there's a bit of soot. These do not seal. There is an exhaust smell from inside the from inside the engine bay. It's not a perfect seal. It might get better as I drive, but I'm not a huge fan. I had to notch the subframe to get it in, but it does fit pretty well. And I find that if you pull the axle out, you don't even need to disconnect anything from, like, you don't have to take it out in two pieces. It'll just come right out. I'm gonna probably look at getting a different header, but it works for now. The header comes to a 3-bolt collector, and then from there I just custom made a 2.5-inch stainless steel exhaust. This is probably the best one I've made. It's not perfect. I am not a professional welder by any stretch, but it's sealed. There is no rubbing, there's no knocking on the exhaust at all. And it should, ironically, I think it will actually tuck better once we go to a smaller motor, because then we can run the mounts on high and the actual height of the exhaust will raise up a little with the header. The lower suspension is all redone for the front. We went with max speeding rods for the shock towers. For the shocks, coilovers. They were cheap. We're on a budget. Trying to build our business, but that is why we went with those. I forgot. I need to address this. This is the line is too long. I have some brackets I designed and they broke. It's actually not a huge deal. It is rubbing, but it's loose and it's not touching anything rotating, but it does need to get addressed. Manual rack, EF, as you can see, all new bushings in the rack. Everything's super tight. And then this is probably the craziest thing I've done. That's a plastic controller bushing, 3D printed ABS plastic, and it is working. There's no knocking noise, there's no rubbing, there's no clunking, there's no nothing. I don't know how long this is gonna work, but as of right now, 3D printed inner control arm bushings are working perfectly. Other than that, we dropped the subframe, painted everything, cleaned it all up. Some big old track rods, which may need some dressing later, but for right now they're working. Yeah, and you can see the EWP from here, which is working pretty well. So the car's in a good spot. So what comes after this? The interesting thing is all of this, the K swap, the custom work, the fuel system, all of it is so that the car can be stripped down and put back together as quickly as possible. We knew we wanted a K, we knew we wanted to use the EF that Levi had, but it's always been so that we can experiment with different technologies. We have a bunch of ideas that we want to go with. A bunch of aero things, weird stuff that I don't know how well it's going to work, but I'm going to try. We decided after doing while we were tuning today, that the first project what we're going to go with is going to be all-wheel drive. Now the funny thing is, that's not really experimental. You can buy the kits from S1, slap them in, go make a bunch of power, and smoke yourself some Lamborghinis. What we're going to do is we're going to get the S1 kit, but instead of running a drive shaft front to back, we're going to put an E-motor on the back of the diff. I don't know if it's going to work. I don't know how I'm going to make it work. I don't know where we're going to put the batteries. There's a million problems, but that's what we're going to do. That's next. We had discussed boosting the car, and greed might get the better of us. We might end up boosting it beforehand, but as of right now, the plan is to keep the motor NA, put a motor back there, an E-motor, and see if we can make a hybrid. Totally just to see if we can do it. I don't think it's better or worse than really anything. I don't know if it'll work at all. I just think it'd be cool and it's something different, and it's using existing technologies. So the actual fabrication is probably still within my personal realm. I don't want to go outsource any of the crazy stuff. So yeah, that is big future plans, phase 2, if you will. Obviously, I'll make more videos as it goes, but this is 2 years in the books.